Well, I'm excited. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of you here on a topic that is near and dear certainly to my heart. And it's truly an honor to welcome Assistant Secretary Ryan. Assistant Secretary Ryan served in the White House from 1994 to 2000 as Deputy Director of Scheduling for the First Lady Hillary Clinton and as Special Assistant to the First Lady's Chief of Staff. From 2009 to 2013, she served in the White House as Assistant to the Vice President and Special Assistant to the President for Intergovernmental Affairs and Public Engagement. And in this role, she served as a Vice President liaison to the elected officials and constituency groups. In 2013, she assumed her position as Assistant Secretary of State for Educational and Cultural Affairs, ECA, as we well know. In this capacity, she oversees a huge portfolio that range from academic, cultural, private sector, professional youth, and sports exchange programs. And the purpose is to increase mutual understanding between the people of the United States and the people of other countries in terms of peaceful relations. It is truly an honor to welcome her here today. And this is going to be really a discussion. For about the first 30 minutes, I will ask a series of questions. And then we want to open it up to you because I'm sure many of you have lots of questions for her and want to make sure that you have an opportunity to engage with her. And so once again, thank you for being with us here, and we're really honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Fanta. I'm really, really pleased to be here with all of you and looking forward to our discussion.
Wonderful. Well, maybe you could start off by talking a little bit more about your portfolio. Can you tell us a little bit more about the mission and the work and some of your priority areas, perhaps?
Absolutely. So we have a wonderful mission in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, and that is to increase mutual understanding between the people of the United States and people all over the world. We're able to accomplish this through a variety of programs, largely exchange programs. The real flagship program, the most well-known, is our Fulbright program, which many of you are probably aware of. But we have over 100 exchange programs that we run. And as I like to say to people, it's virtually anything you can think of, I think we probably run an exchange related to that. So we have high school exchange programs, college level, graduate school level, but we also have professional programs with journalists, lawyers, virtually any profession you can think of, and arts programs where we have arts exchanges, music exchanges, sports exchanges. So we've really, and this all predates me, the State Department and all the wonderful people of the State Department have really come up with the real universe of possibilities for us to look at when we want to engage with another country. And what's great about that is when we work with embassies around the world, and they really can tell us, here's where you can really make a difference, or here's where we could open a door with an exchange. And that's how we're able to find out which exchange is the best one for us to look at. In addition to exchanges, we also have a Cultural Heritage Center, which is timely right now. The work of the Cultural Heritage Center works with other countries to help preserve their heritage, whether it is perhaps in a state of decay, or right now, as sadly we're seeing with ISIL, if it's under threat or destruction, as we're seeing in Iraq and Syria right now. Our Cultural Heritage Center has been doing a lot in partnership with the coalition to try to document what exactly has been destroyed, so when there is a time when we can take action and help, we will be able to do that. And also, we run English language programs around the world, where we send English fellows from our Fulbright program overseas, but we also have English access programs for younger students. And so we really do pride ourselves as being able to do a lot of positive work that helps to build relationships and lay the foundation for our overall foreign policy.
Wonderful. Wow. So tell me a little bit about, we're living in a world that is very much in turmoil. Safe to say you just need to watch the news to really be sometimes depressed about what's happening in the news. What's the role of education exchange in this day and age? Where are we going with that?
Well, it's an excellent question. Yesterday, the Iraqi Minister of Education came in to meet with us because so many of their students have been displaced. So we're working with him and with his team to try to see where can we step in to help increase our number of exchanges and bring more Iraqis here to study. 7 of their universities have actually been either destroyed or shut down by ISIL. So that's something that right here, right now, we need to see how we can help those students. That's something the Iraqis are very focused on as well. So that's a very sort of real-world, real-time example in terms of what we're dealing with. But what we like to think is that even beyond Iraq and areas of crisis, educational exchanges help a student from another country comes here to the United States and leaves having a much better understanding of the United States, of our values, of how we operate, and inevitably, when they return home, they are better able to explain to their family and friends what the United States is really about. And as I like to say, there's no price that you can put on that. It's truly invaluable. Senator Lindsey Graham, I learned this when I was coming into the job, has called these programs, exchange programs, national security insurance. Because when you develop those relationships around the world, if a student studies overseas, it really stays with them for decades. It's something that really affects their whole trajectory, their way of looking at the world, their way of looking at the United States. And that's something that we can then count on in terms of a bridge in a relationship.
Wonderful, great. It's safe to say that in U.S. higher education, we're in a crisis. And certainly the crisis is around education abroad.
Yes.
And the fact that American students really, when it comes to numbers, the numbers are quite low in terms of the number of students who are studying abroad. American University, I would say, is probably an anomaly because 70% of our undergraduate students actually study abroad. But that is certainly not the story around the country.
Right.
And so talk to me a little bit about how is your office working toward that? What are some of your goals and objectives in increasing the number of American students going abroad, because we know how critically important that is?
Well, thank you for raising that point. It is such an important point, and I know that you and I share this view, and we've talked about this ourselves. It's something that is of concern to us in the State Department. When you think about U.S. students who do not have the opportunity to go overseas or who do not explore the option of going overseas, you really have to look down the line. And one example that we like to use at the State Department is, imagine a couple of decades from now, you have a U.S. business person who's sitting across the table from a Chinese business person. Chances are that Chinese business person has either studied in the United States or spent some time in the United States and has an understanding of our culture. Chances are the U.S. business person has not spent time in China or doesn't have that understanding. Think about that dynamic in that negotiation. And so that's something we're trying to communicate to students, is that this is really about your future. It's about your own marketability. It's about your own success, because the world is shrinking every day. And global experience is going to become more and more a part of what employers are looking at when they're hiring students. Now, for us, from a strategic perspective, we also look at it as the long-term goals and the long-term relationships that the United States has around the world. And when you look at the fact that we have close to 1 million foreign students studying here every year, and we have a very small fraction of that, I want to say it's right around 300,000 U.S. students traveling overseas to study. We have as many U.S. students traveling at all to study abroad, anywhere, as we do Chinese students in the United States. And that's a real concern for us in terms of the long-term goals of the United States and our relationships around the world, because nothing can broaden a mind or enhance understanding more than studying abroad. So I do want to applaud American University. Unfortunately, you very much are an anomaly. So we are opening a U.S. Study Abroad office in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, where we're really going to focus on how we can raise awareness about the benefits of studying abroad and really work to make sure that universities like American, which would be a wonderful model for us to be able to work with you to see how have you achieved such success in this area. It would really help us to look at that and see how we could share that knowledge with other universities.
Well, we really applaud you for opening a new office.
Yes.
I'm very excited about
Yes.
that, because I do think this is going to be a
Yes.
major step in the direction. And related to sort of the study abroad, I know certainly with the changing demographic of students coming into higher education, diversity is something that we're talking about day in and day out, and issues of inclusion. And I certainly know the Bureau has been committed to that. Tell us a little bit about what you see in terms of the future as far as your programs and the role of diversity in your programs. I have one of my mentees who's a Boren, who just found out she's a Boren right there.
Oh, wonderful.
We have several others here. But tell us a little bit more about where you see the future in terms of some of the diversity and inclusion work.
Absolutely. We think it's really important that our study abroad contingent, the students who are studying overseas from the United States, really actually reflect who the United States is, and that we are a very diverse country. And we want students from all backgrounds, from all parts of the country, to look at study abroad as an option. This is something that is a challenge for us. We really want to help spread the word. And when I talk to students about studying abroad, what I hear most often is it's too expensive. I studied abroad myself, but I almost didn't look into it because I just thought it would likely be too expensive. So I really almost didn't research it. When I researched it, it turned out that my study abroad experience was going to come out to be the same cost as my semester at school. So for me, that was illuminating, and I did study abroad. But it is a challenge, and it is what I hear most often. So we're very proud of the Gilman Scholarship Program. It's a wonderful program that I try to spread the word about as much as possible. Gilman Scholarship is really only available to students who are Pell Grant recipients, so are on financial aid, because we do think it's important that all students, that it's really merit-based, and that everyone has the opportunity to pursue a study abroad opportunity.
Wonderful, great. So tell me a little bit about what are you seeing as the major challenges in your work? What's challenging?
Vladimir Putin is a big challenge.
Have you found a solution to that?
No. It's a challenge. We had a wonderful, wonderful program, a high school exchange program called the Flex program. And we have two wonderful high school exchange programs, which I think are amazing, because if you think about a high school student spending an academic year in another country, because they go both ways, these programs. We have students going overseas to Russia and the periphery of Russia in the Flex program in high school. And also vice versa, Russia and the periphery coming to the U.S., these high school students for academic year. And the same with our YES program, which is a high school program for students from Muslim-majority countries to come here to the United States for an academic year. And we send U.S. high school students to Muslim-majority countries for a high school academic year. I think it's incredibly powerful as a program. I can't imagine, as a high school student, having to take a year abroad. I think is a really brave and wonderful, wonderful opportunity, and I think it can completely, transform a perspective, but also really open up doors in terms of future possibilities. Unfortunately, recently, about 6 or 7 months ago, Putin shut down our Flex program in Russia, which was very disappointing to us because it was one of the few links that we still did have in terms of exchange and being able to work together. So that's something, and we talk a lot about how else can we make sure that we reach people, and one thing that we do in a situation like this where we have this sort of challenge is we work with our alumni. We make sure that the alumni of our programs in Russia and in the periphery where things are tough right now are hearing from us, feel connected to us still. And so that's one example. The other example, which I know is obvious, is ISIL, which is a real challenge too. We don't want there to be a lost generation in terms of education, and we are very focused on the cultural heritage piece.
Yeah, no, and I'm really glad to hear to hear the conversation around these programs, because given the youth bulge around the world,
yes,
the youth really are the future, and so investment in the youth is certainly something that I think is critically important.
Exactly. About 85% of our exchange participants are under the age of 35.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. So how do you define success? How do you define success in your work?
So we actually, proud to say, about 15 years ago, I've only been there for about 20 months, but 15 years ago, the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs was the first bureau at the State Department to open an evaluations unit, which was very smart, very forward-thinking. So they're only able to do, because really deep, intensive evaluations of these programs and participants takes a lot of time, and that takes resources. So we're not able to do as many in-depth evaluations as we would like to do. So we have informal evaluations as well. Talking to a participant when a participant arrives, and then when a participant departs, just to get a sense of how they thought the program ran. And in that conversation, you inevitably also get a sense of whether or not their perspective has changed, if there's something that has shifted in them. So that, for us, that's really important. But it is hard. It's an excellent question, and I talk to Congress a lot about this. It's hard to really quantify the progress that we make with people in terms of their own minds and how they view the world. So our evaluations unit does a wonderful job. I wish that there were more resources to do more of those sorts of more in-depth evaluations.
So the other question is, where do you see the potential for partnership between ECA and higher education and the higher education sector? I know Education USA has certainly been working very closely with us. What are some of your thoughts around where the partnership could be strengthened or ideas around that?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, I've had, just like yesterday with the meeting with the Minister of Higher Education from Iraq, many meetings with our diplomatic counterparts in higher education from around the world, and every single one of them is interested in partnerships with universities from their country and partnerships here with U.S. universities. Both from a research perspective, many, many countries around the world want to link their universities to our universities in terms of research and sharing professors back and forth in terms of exchange and finding ways to collaborate and actually jointly research together. Virtually every country that we meet with is interested in pursuing these linkages. It's interesting because what I always end up having to explain is that our higher education system is decentralized. Most of these countries, the higher education system is actually controlled by their governments. Ours is not. So we do try to help guide them in how to best pursue these linkages here in the United States.
Right, wonderful. Fulbright, for a minute there, we were a little bit concerned about Fulbright.
Yes.
And my dear friend, Anita McBride, executive in residence, who was chair of the Fulbright board and is still on the board and a good friend of yours.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the future of Fulbright.
Well, first of all, I do want to just say Anita McBride is such the Fulbright champion.
She
but
is.
Also just
a
wonderful support and board member. Has been wonderful to me from the moment I walked in. And so we keep trying to extend and beg her to stay. So we've succeeded thus far because she really is sort of the best example of a really fantastic board member.
Absolutely agree.
She really does an amazing job, not only for us internally, but also externally in terms of sharing the work of Fulbright and the importance of Fulbright and what we do. And I know Anita would say the same. I think Fulbright, it's our flagship program. It really is the example of why exchange is so critical. And Senator Fulbright had amazing foresight to see that by bringing people to each other's countries, sending Americans overseas and bringing people here would really, especially in an educational lens, having them come and study in another country, that would really lay a powerful foundation for understanding that country, and also they'd be able to bring that home with them. So for us, we see Fulbright as remaining strong. We did hit a bit of a bump in the road, but I have to say, I think there's really universal support for it now. We've talked about this a lot in the board meetings, Anita and I, and we think we've had a lot of success in making sure that people understand the real richness of the program.
Well, we've certainly benefited from her expertise at American. She's been a great champion here, so we appreciate that. So my other question has to do with, where do you see opportunities for innovation in this work? Where are there opportunities for innovation?
Well, it's something we think about a lot. In fact, it's something that Congress has raised with us many times when we go up to Capitol Hill. And one area that we've really looked at are virtual exchanges. I still think, obviously, the people-to-people exchange, actually going to another country, bringing people here from other countries, nothing can replace that experience. But not everybody can do it. Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited resources, so we just can't do that across the board. So we're really trying to expand our virtual exchange program. And it's been really interesting to see. We've done programs where we bring classroom from Nicaragua and connect it to a classroom here in the U.S., and they work together. We did a similar thing when the First Lady was in China, connecting her with a classroom in China with a classroom in California. And it's a great way to help people have a bit of an international experience in a different fashion. So I would say that's one way we're trying to innovate, is through virtual exchanges. And the J. Christopher Stevens program is a program that the Vice President just launched and announced a few months ago. And it's in honor of our ambassador who was killed in Libya. And it's going to be a virtual exchange program. And it's going to be interesting because it's really going to link students in the region with each other to work together, a classroom in Morocco with a classroom in Jordan, and be able to work together as well as link with the United States. So we're excited about that. And lastly, I would say, and this I know will be familiar to all of you, we are beginning to really try to explore the MOOC world and work more and more to provide MOOCs, especially to alumni of our programs, so that when they return home, we can do things with them. And MOOCs is something that we found to be a success in terms of what people are looking to, how they would like to stay connected to us.
Right. Oh, wonderful. So my last question, because I really want to open this up to discussion, and I know many of you can't wait to ask your questions, and I want to really give you enough room for that. My last question is, knowing that there's not a typical day, what does the day look like for you?
Okay. It's really funny because someone just asked me this question yesterday, and it's, I think, the only 2 times I've been asked. But a typical day is we have meetings that are sort of State Department-wide meetings, and those are about 3 mornings a week. So my day usually starts off with that. And then for me, I'm hugely fortunate because what I get to do is really meet with exchange participants for a large part of our day. So I would say my day is meetings. Never have I had so many meetings since I've come to the State Department. But for me, I get to come out of meetings and meet with our exchange participants who are coming through constantly, coming through Washington, and to sit down and talk to them, hear about their experience, hear about what they hope to learn while they're here in the United States or what they have learned while here in the United States. And I, every day, feel very fortunate to be able to do that.
Wonderful. Great. Well, before we open it up to some questions, I know we have some of our Fulbrighters in the room. Can you raise your hand if you're Fulbrighters?
Oh, wonderful.
Wow, yeah.
Wow.
No, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, so American is really at the forefront.
Yeah, no,
yes,
we
it's
absolutely.
great to see. Clearly, Anita's been recruiting.
Well, I think there's something about the students who decide to come to American University.
Okay.
And you are in the School of International Service. There's a real commitment to this work. I think combined with just incredible staff and others who are very committed to getting the work done.
Well, it's wonderful to see.
So yeah,
Thank
so we
you.
have our Fulbright. There's some of the Borens or Gilman and others in the room.
Oh,
yeah.
fantastic.
So we're there. And are there any of the Humphreys by any chance? Humphrey Fellows? Because I know they were going out to Washington today. You all keep them very busy.
We do, yes.
You keep them very busy. Well, with that said, I think I want to open it up to the floor for some discussions. I know we have certainly I have many of my students who are graduate students who are interested in the field and what we do, and certainly some of our Fulbright and others. So this is your opportunity to sort of share some of your reflections, and this is your opportunity to ask Assistant Secretary Ryan. The microphones are on both sides, so please, when you do, please introduce yourself so we know who you are, and then your question. We'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Brian Yanantuano. I'm an AU alum and also a critical language scholarship.
There you go,
fantastic.
critical language.
That's great.
So international exchange has had a huge impact on my life. And right now I work at a foundation which does education exchange between US and China from pre-K all the way to policymaker.
Oh, which one is that?
We're called the Amison Education and Cultural Exchange Foundation.
Wonderful, yes, yeah.
And so my question is mainly deals with China. And the first part of it is, what are the mechanisms for building trust, mutual trust between both countries through these exchanges? And secondly, with so many Chinese studying in the U.S. And bringing that international perspective back home, how does that relate into their strategic level considerations? For instance, Xi Jinping studied in Iowa for a while. How does that affect his impact or affect his decision making?
Yes. So in terms of the mechanisms that we use to look at the impact of exchanges and how we should really frame the exchanges, we have a dialogue with the Chinese people-to-people exchange dialogue. And that predates me. It's been going on now for about 3 years, I think, and maybe 4. And it's been really fascinating to be able to sit at the table with the Chinese delegations several times a year and really discuss how we can all move forward on exchange. And the Chinese, you know this for sure, could not get enough of exchange programs in terms, both ways, in terms of sending Chinese here and also bringing Americans there. So that's something that we're always working on, new ways and new models that we can announce at each, dialogue that's actually taking place. And then in terms of the impact, it's a really excellent question, and something we've asked ourselves about as well, especially as it relates to President Xi Jinping. So that's been a challenge because I think in some ways when he arrived in office, I think we thought, especially because he went back to visit Iowa, and you thought, wow, you really could see his connection with the United States. We thought that perhaps that signaled something. But we know there's challenges. In fact, every time we really talk to them, we've had challenges where we do send Americans, for instance, maybe an American speaker from the United States that the State Department or the embassy sends, and a local law enforcement official won't let them into the community. So as much as we do see some small steps in progress in terms of how we hope to work together, there do remain challenges. But overall, I think our exchanges really are a perfect example of what we hope long-term foreign policy goals can be, which is really slowly but surely laying the foundation, and exchanges are a wonderful way to do that, that you will eventually have a generation that might perhaps engage differently based on their experiences in the United States or with Americans in China. It's a challenge. It's something that we discuss, but I'm hopeful that the enthusiasm that we see on the Chinese side and the enthusiasm that we have to send more Americans, hopefully, to China will help just lay a foundation for an even stronger relationship moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, my name is Rachel Gordon, and I work at the Washington College of Law in the Office of Global Opportunities, and we do all of the international exchanges for the law school. My question relates to your evaluations unit. Are there any outcomes or metrics that really make a difference when you talk to people externally who might not know about exchanges, might not understand what the benefits are? Are there any specific things that people really tend to latch onto and say, oh, this is great, I didn't know about this?
Well, so the evaluations are really about the participants who finished one of our exchange programs. So the people that we actually are talking to are people who've come on one of the U.S. State Department programs and then returned home, and we try to stay in touch with them in the long term. And we actually contract these evaluations out, so they're not viewed as biased in-house evaluations. But I will say, in answer to your broader question, yes, we do. We very often have people who don't understand. I find that very frequently I'm talking to people who actually don't understand what an exchange is, really what's behind the concept, how they can be viewed as strategic, and it's something I've really endeavored to share more broadly, is that exchanges can be a part of a really important foreign policy toolbox. And it's something that I think we have been able to do recently, and it's been great to see. And over the years, you've seen, one of my favorite statistics is about 370 or so, I think it might be more than that actually at this point, of our exchange alumni. So people who've been on our exchanges are either current world leaders or former world leaders. And 50 of our exchange alumni are Nobel laureates.
Yes.
So when you think about someone who's been on an exchange who ends up being a world leader, for instance, and then is dealing with the United States, that can only have been a beneficial component of how they then deal with the United States. So I'm always looking to share what I think are important about exchanges, but I do find that not everyone really understands the concept.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Scott, your question.
Hi, my name is Lucas Olson. Thank you both for being here to facilitate this conversation. I'm a first-year master's student at SIS, and I was also a Fulbright alum from Canada, from undergraduate. And so I'm curious to ask you about the new office that you're setting up right now. What's the work that it's doing? And I'm curious as well to ask if you've thought about any potential for filmmaking in getting the word out about international education, if that's something that you've...
So first of all, Leanne Dunsmore is here with us. I have to say, I was thrilled to be able to... Leanne's name is legendary in the Bureau of ECA, and mostly because she's going to come and join us and open this office. So we're very excited about that.
Yes.
Yes, we're thrilled. There's been a lot of buzz, Leanne, that it's all happening now, so that's been great. So we're excited about this. And I'll answer the second part of your question first, actually. It's one of the things I've thought about in terms of how to get the story out there about U.S. study abroad is really looking at highly accomplished people who've studied abroad and just sort of filming them about how their experience impacted them, and maybe sort of bringing that all together. So that's really thinking of a short sort of PSA type of thing to get out there is something that we've thought a little bit about. But in terms of, maybe longer form filmmaking, I think that's something we should think about too.
Would you like to talk about your project very briefly?
Sure, yes. I'm concentrating in social enterprise, and so I started a nonprofit while in school here that documents the experience of U.S. citizens going abroad. And I was curious to ask you about what you're working on because I'm looking for opportunities to hopefully grow and produce a documentary about U.S. citizens going abroad and how it changes their sense of citizenship.
Well, Leanne and I would love to work with you. So
Well,
it sounds fantastic.
Be sure to talk with you both after the event.
That's great. No, that's really great. So what we hope is that the U.S. Study Abroad Office will be a great resource and a connection to universities, but also potential students. And there's a demographic that I realized I don't think we were thinking enough about that we should think about, and that's parents.
Yes. Parents are.
It's really something that I've
Absolutely.
noticed recently, which
Yes.
is, I think there are parents who, especially for certain regions of the world, they might have concerns. So finding ways to educate people about safety and what's safe and where you should pursue study abroad, because I know we had our critical language scholarship person who was up first. We do want people to think of different places to study abroad, places where they might not have thought previously. I mean, for instance, I studied in London, which was very sort of typical when I was in college, but I love that students today are thinking about studying in China or Russia or Morocco or any place in the Middle East as well, and also the Western Hemisphere throughout. So we've got a great partnership called 100,000 Strong, where we're trying to really raise awareness about people traveling south and studying throughout the hemisphere. So for us, we're hoping that the office will be able to do a lot of that. It's really about raising awareness and making sure that people have the resources they need to make those decisions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Matt?
How are you? Thanks for being here, Assistant Secretary Ryan. I work here as well. My name is Matt Sacco in the International Programs Office for SIS. And my question is also related to the new Study Abroad unit, which is really exciting for a lot of folks in higher ed. I have two questions, I guess. One is, do you think that this idea of doubling study abroad that's been thrown out by a lot of folks like IIE and many others with a goal of around 2019 or 2020 is something that's realistic or maybe better suited for like a motivation of the new Study Abroad office? And also, could you talk a little bit about some of the program initiatives or things that the office would be interested in doing, like the MOOC that's out for a proposal right now, which would serve as a resource, as you were mentioning, for higher institutions, but also maybe it could be useful for families and things like that.
So for the second question first, yes, the MOOCs, connecting people virtually, doing webinars, Google Hangouts, anything that we can do to really connect people and give them information, because we don't know, but what we think, American University really is an exception, and it's wonderful to see, but I don't know that other universities are supporting their students in the same way with the resources they need to make these decisions. So as much as we can play a role in providing that material through other means, we want to find a way to do that. And in terms of Generation Study Abroad, which is IIE's initiative, but we're a partner with them on, I think it's ambitious, but I do think it's possible if people. One of the things that I think will help enormously is people to hear from those of you who have studied abroad, to hear from you, but also perhaps to even see how it has impacted your lives and the benefits that it's given you, and what you've been able to bring back from those experiences and share with your family and friends, that they perhaps then think, wow, maybe this is something that I should do. One of the other things I always do when I speak to our exchange students who are here in the United States from other countries is encourage them to talk to Americans in the classroom and really talk to them about looking at this as an option for them to think about as well. Because I do think that it's really critical that we try to raise those numbers. Doubling the number is going to be hard work, but my hope is, although ambitious, I do hope that it's possible.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes?
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm a Portuguese Fulbrighter here on my first year. I'm in the Arts Management program,
Okay.
and I recently discovered that the National Endowment for the Arts has a program with the Foreigner Service Institute to like train culturally and artistically the future diplomats.
Yes.
So my first question is, how do you train American Fulbrighters that are going abroad? And my second question is that, do you think a Fulbright could benefit with a partnership like this with the NEA?
Yes, I do. I think that sort of partnership is, especially with your interests and your own work, I think not only could you benefit from it, but I think the NEA could benefit from it. I really think they could learn a lot from you. That's what's so wonderful about the Fulbrighters, is it's really both ways. You being able to share with them and a host institution, you know, if you were able to work with them, like NEA could really learn from you as well. In terms of Fulbrighters who go overseas, same with the Fulbrighters who come here, we really have, I would say, they're entry seminars. Would you call them that, Anita? Yeah. Enrichment, exactly. So when people come through, or right before we have U.S. students about to go overseas, we'll really sit with them and days-long seminars where they'll really be educated about traveling overseas, what that means, what they need to be prepared for. And what we always do remind them, I think of Anita, is, you know, the Fulbright is a public diplomacy program. So we really do hope that our students and scholars are interacting broadly in their communities so that people can learn from them. And that's both ways. And clearly you are, as you're here with us, and you're also thinking about working with the NEA. So we would encourage you to think about that.
Yami?
Hello, my name is Yamalette, and I'm a sophomore here at American University. And I just recently found out that I got the Bourne, so
That's wonderful.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Very
And
excited.
thank you for being here. My question is more of like, what are the efforts to bring on board the minority community? I was very fortunate to be at American University and have a great Merit Award office that, you know, they make sure that they reach out to a lot of the students here on campus. But I know that most of my friends back home, I didn't even know that there's like high school abroad programs to go to these places. And back home, I mentioned something as exchange program, and they're like, are you, what? Like, it's
Right.
like a completely new term for them. So I would like to learn about the efforts that are being done to reach them.
It's a really important question and something we've really looked at. Actually, recently I was down in New Orleans, and one of the things that I did when I was down there was visit Xavier College in New Orleans, which is a Catholic, historically black university. And Xavier does a wonderful job of encouraging their students to study abroad. They really give them the right resources to make these decisions and really have done, and so they were a great model for me to be able to talk to get a sense of what it is they're doing. And really what they're doing sounds very similar to perhaps what you're doing here, is making it a part of the discussion from the moment the student arrives freshman year. Really talking them through this from the very beginning and having a very supportive faculty, which we talked about a bit. What was interesting in the conversation down in Xavier were the faculty who had either traveled abroad themselves and then returned to their classroom to talk to their students, which was a wonderful way to encourage the students to think about it, and a few faculty members there from other universities who said, I wish my college was as supportive of faculty going abroad to teach, because it can impact that classroom when you return. So we are looking at ways that we can work when Leanne is there to really educate other colleges and universities about how we can reach the minority community, because as I said earlier, we really want our students who are studying overseas from the United States to reflect the wonderful diversity that we have in the United States. I think it's a really important message. It's actually something that I've heard from exchange participants who come here from overseas. Sure. They come here, and sometimes I'll ask them, what surprised you about being here in the United States? Many of them have been surprised by how diverse we are. And I love that. I think what a wonderful way for them to return home and be able to talk about that diversity. And some of them have talked about the cultural diversity. I had one student talk about what an impact it had when he went to an LGBT parade. Yes. Came from a country where that would never happen. And so it really, for him, showed how open we were and diverse, and he loved that. So anything that we can really showcase just by example here is important, but it's equally important that when we send our students overseas, they also reflect that diversity. So it's something we're really working on through talking to schools like Xavier, finding out what works with them, Really, the other thing we're doing too is trying to just get the word out. It's something we're going to do with Leanne. We've tried to think of some creative ways, like the film idea I mentioned. We'd love to work on that documentary. But anything we can do to really get the word out about study abroad and get it to a really wide audience, that's our objective.
And just kind of like a suggestion, I feel like it should start earlier. I
Yes.
feel like
High school.
Actually, yes.
aiming high school
Yes.
would be a great thing. And I'm somebody who's like very interested in informing my community about all these opportunities. And I feel like these kids most of us come from a parents that don't even like
Think about
illusion
this.
or think
Right.
about it. They don't think about higher education, imagine about going abroad to a new country that they don't even know. So I just feel like aiming high school students, maybe senior or junior year, just like college preparation,
Yes.
just kind of inform them about all this. I feel like with the filming idea
Yeah.
would be great.
Absolutely.
You know?
No, I think that's a fantastic point. We're in touch with high schools about really trying to get them to host our exchange students from our high school programs, but it's an excellent point. We should also be in touch with high schools to encourage them to start talking to their students about thinking about both high school exchange. I know I did not do this, but I have friends who went on summer exchanges during high school, and that did change their own paths and pursuits in terms of study abroad. So, no, that's a fantastic approach as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. We are, there's actually a new person there who we have connected with, but yes, it's a really good point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, Chris, but before actually Chris says something, I'm going to brag about our Office of Merit Award.
Oh, okay.
I am convinced that we have the best office in the world, given their track record. And as you saw with the Fulbrighters and the Borans and the critical language, in fact, in 2014, I think it was AU's #1 in the nation for the combined Boran scholarship and fellowship.
That's amazing.
And top producer of Fulbright. We've been doing that
Well, that's-
consistently
yes.
for several years. And for the past 3 years, it's been the case. So there's been a lot of work, I think, put in the sense that we have students who really want to do this, and then we have the right faculty and the right office that is really committed to this work. So that is
that's
something
really
we're very
an
proud
amazing
of.
achievement. So all of you should
Yes.
be very proud of that. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic
Yeah.
to hear.
Chris, go right ahead.
Thank you, Fanta. I have a couple of interconnected questions about Africa. Oh, I am Chris Swanson. I am the Assistant Director of the Office of Merit Awards, which Fanta just spoke highly of. I do Fulbright, Boren, advising, CLS, and so on. My questions have to do with Africa. And I'm thinking of 3 different programs. I'm thinking of the Fulbright, where at least for U.S. students heading abroad, there are just not many grants available at all in sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
And I have a feeling, as someone who does advising, I have a feeling that if there were more grants, there would be more applicants, but that the number of grants available scares people from applying.
Right.
So I'm wondering about that phenomenon. I'm wondering why, with the exception of Arabic, there are no African languages under the Critical Language Scholarship.
Right.
And I'm also interested in your thoughts on the new Mandela Fellowship.
So your first 2 points are honestly just things that we really need to work on, and they're excellent points to raise, and we'll carry them back with us because on the first point, I was actually in Rwanda and Uganda last year, and it was evident because I met with a scholar who was in Uganda, a U.S. Fulbright scholar, but it was clear from my talks with the embassy in Uganda, Rwanda, and then back when I returned that there really are very few. And so that is something that we need to overcome. And the language piece we also do. So this is something that we will work on. It's not where we should be. And Mandela Fellowships. The Mandela Fellowship, which is also known as YALI, it's been actually officially named the Mandela Washington Fellows, was something that was launched by the president, something he took a great deal of interest in himself, and which was wonderful for us to see because he's a big believer in exchange programs himself and has given us a lot of support, which we appreciate. And I think you really saw that come to life in these Mandela Fellows who arrived last year. There are 500 of them last year at 25 different universities for 6 weeks in academic institutes. And there were 3 areas of study that each scholar or fellow was really placed either to study civil society, entrepreneurship, or government. And it was a really successful program, and these, clearly the embassies did an amazing job, and we also took part in the selection process, which was really formidable because 50,000 people applied for 500 spots, which was amazing. So as you can imagine, even the people that did not get in were just stellar beyond imagination. So we're excited to do the program again this year. We hope that it will be an annual program. I know President Obama, as I said, is quite invested in it, so I hope that it continues in the years and decades ahead, because I think you could see really what it did in not only connecting these fellows to the United States, these young leaders, giving them that academic experience in a 6-week time frame to bring back to their homes and their communities, tying them to each other was something that we saw. That network that they developed with one another was really powerful. The information they shared with one another, clearly they were going to stay in touch when they returned to their countries, which I know is really one of the things President Obama was focused on, which is strengthening the continent by really investing in the future of the continent, and that's what the Mandela Fellowship is about. So it's exciting to see. Viewed as such a success that we now have a program called YSEALI, which is Young Southeast Asian Leaders, and the President just recently announced a program for the Western Hemisphere, YLI, we're learning all the acronyms, Young Latin American Leaders. So we're excited about the success of the Mandela Fellows. It's really, for sure, paved the way for these other programs that are really developed in a similar vein.
Great, thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jeannie. I'm an American University alum for undergrad, and I currently work at IREX for the Global Undergraduate Exchange Programs, and YALI, but I don't work on those.
Okay.
But it was a great transition, so I had to throw it in there. First off, I wanted to thank you for continuing to fund our programs. It's really wonderful to see. I work with Pakistani students, so they have a semester program, and it's amazing to see them come in August or January and how much they grow over just 3 or 4 months.
Which programs do you work on?
I work with the Global UGrad Pakistan and then Kosovo UGrad.
Yeah.
I work also closely with the Thomas Jefferson Scholarship Program, but I'm not directly on those programs.
Okay.
But I want to thank you for continuing to fund those.
Absolutely.
And then I do have a question. I'm interested because the Pakistanis are here for a semester, the Tunisians are here for a year. I'm interested to see what process you guys go through in selecting short-term versus long-term programs, especially with the growth of the short-term programs such as YALI of just like a 6-week program, how that process comes about.
So it's interesting. It's sort of very fluid, depending on everything that's happening around the world. And we work very closely with our regional bureaus. We sit down with the regional bureaus. They all kind of pitch us on what they need, and then we try to work more broadly with the leadership of the State Department to really come down and decide, and actually with the White House. The National Security Council issues guidance to the public diplomacy part of the State Department, and the memo really dictates the regions we should be focusing on, and the areas. Young leaders, for instance, entrepreneurship, those were 2 areas that were focused for us from last year's memo. So we look for the memo for guidance as well as working with the regional bureaus and then the State Department leadership, and sort of a mix of all 3 and a long extended negotiation because all of our programs are laid out pretty well in advance. And so right now we're working on programs for next year, 16 and even 17, and really looking at it that way. But for Pakistan, for example, because I see your point, so we have Global UGrad, which is a wonderful program. Fulbright, our largest Fulbright program is with Pakistan. So the largest number of Fulbright scholars in the U.S. from any country are actually from Pakistan. So we always weigh that as well. When you're looking at Thomas Jefferson and Global UGrad, when we're looking at Global UGrad, we know that the Fulbright is actually a long-term program that we're heavily invested in for that. That's just as an example. So we're always looking at, for the really strategic areas of the world that we want to engage with, we want a mix of short-term and long-term programs because we know some people can't take the long-term time away from their families and their friends and their jobs. So we want to really make sure that we have a variety of options for people.
Great, thank you. Talking about Pakistan, Saba is one of the Fulbright Pakistanis.
Oh, wonderful. So you know that.
Like Dr. Oz said, I'm a Fulbright scholar from Pakistan, and I'm doing my master's in international development. This is actually my last semester. Yep. So I have 2 questions regarding Pakistan Fulbright program in particular. The first one is that, like you mentioned, it's the largest program in Pakistan, around over 150 students, I think they come every year to US for master's or PhD. However, numbers of US scholars or professionals going back to Pakistan, it's very minimal. And for some of the programs, it's completely absent. So I was wondering if something is being done in this regard to ensure the essence of reciprocity. And my second question, it's a bit tough one. And like you mentioned that how programs are designed considering the strategic importance of various regions in U.S. foreign policy. And U.S. Pakistan Fulbright program, it grew exponentially in 2004 and forward, and it was reestablished in Afghanistan and Iraq in 2003. So I was wondering that what would happen, I mean, how does State Department decide on what happens to such programs after the strategic importance or the foreign policy, it shifts towards these regions?
So the second part I'll speak to first is a really excellent question, and it's something we've been struggling with. Recently, I was speaking with some diplomatic counterparts from a Western European country who for decades had had a very sort of specific program that they held with us and very heavily invested in. And we really had to shift away from that because we thought, okay, we very much working together daily as the two countries we are with this country. And so we do have to make those decisions. When the strategic imperative shifts, there's a lot of really high-level discussions before we do anything quickly. Everything is thought through very carefully. The other component of a decision like that is really becoming more and more relevant today is whether or not we can bring private sector money in to compensate if we need to move U.S. dollars, taxpayer dollars, our budget money away from a certain area. Because the private sector, I think, really is understanding more and more the power of exchange. And so we've found a great deal of interest in partnering with us with programs. And so that's one way we think we can help work when there is a shift to make sure that we don't completely lose that kind of exchange opportunity. Remind me your first part of your question again.
I mean, number of U.S. scholars.
Reciprocity.
Yes, so you raise an excellent point, and we do need to think about that. It's something sort of the larger U.S. Study Abroad office we all need to think about in line with the Fulbright office, which is really making sure that students are thinking broadly, and Pakistan would be a wonderful place to send both U.S. Fulbright students and U.S. Fulbright scholars. So it's something that we will look carefully at because I know there is a great imbalance there. Thank you.
Last question.
Hi, my name's Jennifer, and I work with International Arts and Artists. We're one of the J1 visa sponsors, and we work on providing professional training opportunities for interns and young professionals from around the world to come to the U.S. My question is with regards to Cuba. In the last few weeks, we've seen a really exciting opening in relations between the U.S. and Cuba, and I'm just wondering what role there is for ECA and what role there are for exchanges in this relationship.
So yes, it's very exciting. We were all excited about it. So the interesting thing about ECA, our bureau, and Cuba is we've actually been bringing exchange participants here from Cuba for the past several years. So it's really what our programs are about. The same is true of Iran. We have people who come through on exchange programs from Iran. We have people who come through on our programs from Cuba. Both, everybody's aware of this, and it's for us in the U.S. government, I know that it's really something that, in the case of Cuba, our Western Hemisphere Bureau was always really encouraging us to do because they'd hoped that there would be a day like we're seeing today where they began to talk to one another about perhaps normalizing relations. And the thinking is these programs that we've run with various participants, basically what has happened is we have programs, large programs, where we have participants from all over the world or participants from a region. And so we would have someone from Cuba on that exchange program. And in the case of Iran, we recently had a science and technology program where it was basically all Iranians who came here. So we do think that through these programs we can help lay the foundation for a day like we're seeing right now where two countries are trying to talk and get to a different place again.
Thank you.
Well, we are out of time. That's always the challenge, isn't it? But really, I want to, on behalf of American University, thank you again.
Thank you.
For taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us here today. I can certainly say that in my NAFSA hat, we've had a wonderful partnership.
Yes,
and I've
we
very
have.
much enjoyed working with you and your team. It's been a stellar team to work with. And I think it's safe to say, certainly for this audience here, we very much believe in the value of international education exchange and really do hope that through the partnership we can see that grow over the years to come. And then lastly, I think that was a brilliant decision to have hired Leanne.
Yes.
She's an AU alum, but more importantly, you will see someone who will absolutely innovate. We are very
we're
proud
very excited.
of her accomplishment and really wish you all the luck and know that we're here to support in any way we can.
Thanks again. Thank you for
Assistant
having me.
Secretary
Thank
Evans.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Wonderful.